Hello and welcome to another episode of Horror Ghouls After Dark. These are episodes that are freeform. We can talk about whatever we want, and you are our captive, and too bad if you don't like it. Just kidding. We're happy you're here to join us. I'm Megan,
Auntie.
and we are your Horror Ghouls. We are going to talk today a little bit about, this is coming a little belated. It's our Valloween episode, I'm going to call it. Going to talk a little bit about a few horror romance movies that were pretty good for the season. I also want to tell you a little bit about a trip I just took because it's super relevant to our content. So I just got back like a couple weeks ago from New Orleans,
Yeah.
and it was one of my bucket list trips. It was somewhere I've always wanted to go for so very many reasons. But I guess I'll just go in order of the things that I want to share with you from that trip because I'm not going to tell you all about it and show you slides or something like that because no one likes when people do that, right? Um, so the first thing I want to tell you about is I went to a really cool cemetery called St. Louis Number One. It's the oldest cemetery in New Orleans. It has some of our most important kind of like historical people. It's full of the oldest people, all kind of like politicians and um voodoo queens and and things like that. Interestingly, Nicolas Cage has bought himself a crypt, I guess they call it.
That is interesting.
He has bought himself one in the oldest cemetery in New Orleans. Um, what's interesting, if you're unfamiliar, if you're not a cemetery lover like myself, in New Orleans, for multiple reasons, including the very high water table, they bury their people above ground. Um, again, like I said, for multiple reasons, it's the water table. It's because they ran out of room burying people in the ground. It's, whatever. But I guess he wanted so badly to be in the cemetery because he loves New Orleans that he actually bought someone else's crypt and like built over it. Like it's like on the ground and he bought over it.
That seems disrespectful.
If the family sold it, like that's fine, but I feel like I would never even ask someone because I feel like that's weird. Um, but also his what he built there is weird. It's a pyramid. It's a very small pyramid. Very small pyramid.
National treasure much?
But it doesn't fit in with anything else that's in there. Everything else in there is kind of like and they're small, but they're like family mausoleums, or they might be single above ground, and his is a pyramid. So it's weird, it sticks out. Um, apparently he visits it every time he's in town, which I find to be
Weird.
weird. But we're talking about Nicolas Cage, right? So
Uh,
he's known to be a little quirky.
that is pretentious as fuck.
It's a
Be
little bit,
because like if you know, obviously if you know history of pyramids, like actual pyramids, besides them being made by aliens, like obviously kings were put
well,
into
right.
pharaohs were put into pyramids. And so to me it's like, oh, you're calling yourself some type of
Like
very special
royalty,
person, right?
right? Because it was like, I don't know if all of them, but I know even like nobility, like Egyptian nobility, they were dressed certain ways and um, why can't I think of the word for them? Like in their
Like their
tomb.
garb, like their
Yeah.
sarcophagus.
Yeah, thank you, sarcophagus. I was like, I can't even think of it. Um, but what's also interesting about these is you can see all over the cemetery is like who's paid for constant upkeep or does upkeep and whose crypts don't because they start to crumble, they start to get plants that grow through them. I'm gonna share with you a really weird and possibly gross thing that I learned. So if you're not into learning about what happens after people die, fast forward a little bit. So what I learned, and I never knew this and fascinated me. Um, I figured you buy a family plot, which is again above ground, so maybe like three people, and you fill it up and you're done, right? Stands to
Hmm.
reason. That's not what happens. You might know this. I didn't know this. This shocked me. Um, family crypts can hold up to 1,000 bodies, and they still only have like three slots. It depends. It depends how big they are, right? Right. I see your face. I get it. So imagine my surprise standing there learning about this. I was like, what happens? So basically, they fill up whoever passes away, they fill up the spots. And then when they're full and a new person passes away, they take it's basically like a slat or so, like again, I can't think of the word, just kind of like a slate, and they take the bricks down and they take out the oldest body and they break up the bones and they put it in like a slot in the back. So here's what's interesting about these crypts, right?
That is interesting.
Wait, there's more. So New Orleans, it gets really hot, really, really, really hot in the summer. So there's a rule when you're interred there that they cannot open the crypt again for a year and a day. Because what happens when they put the body in there is it basically acts as a crematory. And I'm smiling while I'm telling you this because I'm like, oh, I'm so excited to learn about like what happens. And I had no idea. So it basically acts as a crematory. So by the time they remove whoever, it is basically just bones that they then break up and like put in the slot in the back. There's like another area just for bones. They would then put the new person in and they keep it going like that, as long as whoever can fit in there and the family wants to put more people in there. And I was like, huh, that's very interesting because I'd never heard of that before. I only heard that they bury their people above ground, and I figured it was like a standard plot anywhere is that you buy it for two people or four people when it's full is full.
Right. Yeah, I
But
didn't
that's not the
really.
case.
That's interesting, and it makes me think about other places. Like there are some cemeteries up north where they have crypts or mausoleums up top that seem small, but could have multiple people in there. So although
Sure.
it does not get as hot in the north as it does in the south, I could still imagine like after a certain amount of time when there's just skeletal remains breaking somebody up
Yeah.
and putting them in a little box and pushing them to the backs to make room for the new person who's now passed. Wow,
I
that is
I
a
wonder
very interesting
I
process.
wonder if we do
Practice.
anything like that up here. I don't know because I assumed up here if someone had actually a mausoleum, which I always said that I wanted because I want like a fun marble house to live in when I'm a skeleton. That sounds really dark.
A little
Um,
bit, a tad.
I'm honestly not thinking anything of it. I'm just saying because I think they're beautiful. Like the
They are.
architecture and the structure, it's beautiful and it seems serene. And I assumed that you just hung out in there forever in whatever slot you went into, but maybe it's like New Orleans where they just, they chop up your bones after a while.
I mean, it's
Um,
it's possible, but like I said, it doesn't get as hot. So I can understand like down there, there's a
right.
crematorium aspect to it. So it makes it much easier because I don't know if you guys have ever paid attention or ever knew about an actual crematorium, but like if you ever get ashes, you're not really just getting
Getting your
like
own.
bones. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
getting a lot of mixed stuff that's in there because bones don't always just, pulverize into ash. They have to actually pulverize it and
They
grind
do.
it down.
They take it out of the oh my God, I was gonna say oven.
I was gonna say kiln.
That's so unprofessional, like so disrespectful. I'm like, they just take it out of the oven. Come on. Um, I like kiln better, like it's pottery. I like that. No, but they take it out of a crematory, the person, your loved one, and then they do that. They might take out if you have any metal in your body,
Yeah,
they
they
might
run a
remove
really
that too.
they have a really strong magnet that they run over your body to collect all that stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that stuff is fascinating. And if you heard one of our other most recent episodes, maybe it will make more sense that I said in the episode that I am interested in the idea of running a funeral home, that I now all possess all of this other knowledge, but I digress.
Which, funny enough, I did not mention this in the episode when we talked about this, but she and I have talked about this before, and I said
I
I would
have.
not have a problem running it too, like helping along, because I do like the aspect of when you're helping a family grieve and you're helping them
Planning.
right with the
Yeah,
final things and making sure that that part is as easy as possible. So I care about the human aspect of it and making sure that they are comforted in knowing that their loved one is going to be taken care of, whether they're
absolutely.
getting a burial or they're being cremated, because you still Also, if you didn't know, you still see someone before they're cremated. There's still like a little service that happens, and they're in a certain type of casket. Sometimes they
Yeah.
put you in a casket that you rent, and then they move you into something else in order to
Yeah.
put you in the crematorium.
There's really a lot of
Crematory.
options.
Yeah,
I think we would run a great funeral home. I You know what it is too, is that it's one of those industries that's become a like big business thing. And
right,
I would be very interested in doing like an ethical, like not gouging people type of business, like a very like compassionate care of like pre-planning, whatever, the case is.
yeah,
But,
because funerals are expensive,
they're so
you know.
expensive. And I understand there's a lot of costs that go with them. And I don't think you can kind of like cut all of those costs, but I think you can make them more fair, because it shouldn't be a situation that may like bankrupt someone or like leaves
Right.
people unclaimed because they're afraid of the cost or
Or like
things like that.
what I absolutely hate is when they upsell. It's like if when people are grieving, that is when they're most vulnerable. So, you know, you have somebody who's saying, "Well, I can upsell you on some clothes. I can upsell you on the type of casket you get. We have this casket that's in brass, but we have this one over here that has like chrome." And it's like, you know, it's just like you're doing too much. Like you understand this person is grieving and you're trying to hit them when they're most vulnerable. So they just say, yeah, whatever, just do whatever because I can't handle this. And that
Yeah,
happens a lot of times. And then you wonder why a funeral service in general is like upwards of $30,000.
they're so
Well, a
expensive.
lot of it comes in that upsell that they do because a casket is a casket. And not saying you need to get like a really like cheap casket, but like when they start upselling, those caskets are expensive.
I
And
think
if
whatever you're comfortable with or whatever you feel like, I know there's some specialty ones, like if someone has like a favorite color or a favorite band or like a favorite, what like Gene Simmons made a whole line of Kiss caskets, which I think is very
oh
funny.
wow.
Um, but things that are important and things that shouldn't be skipped because I learned recently, if any of you guys are weird and dark and twisty like me or like us, I don't want to speak for you in that, but I will include you in this anyway.
I'm here.
Um,
Yeah.
Lauren the Mortician, I follow. I love her.
Same. I do.
Also, Caitlin Doty, um, from Ask a Mortician. She's awesome. But they actually talk about vaults, right? When you're burying a casket, because actually it helps to protect and preserve your actual purchases of your casket that you spend so much money on and your person. And I'm not going to get into all the ways that that works for the person without getting into more talk about like decay and then things like that, which is gross, and we'll skip that. But also, it is in a lot of cemeteries a thing that you must have because otherwise the ground can start
Yep.
to dip and sink. But a lot of people offer it only as an upsell, and they don't understand the importance of having it because you don't want to go visit grandma or grandpa and break your leg when you fall into like a pit, right? That's not a thing that we want. So,
Or like, in fact, my grandparents are buried one on top of the other, and you don't realize there is a big ass slab between the caskets to make sure that the one on top does not sink into the one on the bottom, because again, this is in the ground.
right,
And you have to dig deeper to make sure that the bottom casket goes deeper than it normally would, but you're paying for this giant slab. And it's something that when they got the plot before they passed away, that's something that didn't necessarily like you don't think about that you need that
right.
slab. So now
Yeah.
they hit us with and now you got to pay for this slab because it's mandatory. And it's like, oh my God. And there's stuff that you really don't think about. Like you said, putting the vault in, making sure that there's a slab between the two caskets. And so, yeah, it's
Stuff
a
you don't
lot,
think of. Well, thank you for joining us for Horror Ghouls Cemetery chat.
right?
No, no, but seriously, I mean, these are things that I love visiting old cemeteries. I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting to learn about like how they work. Um, I've seen some crazy things. Have you seen some of those stories about like someone goes to like a funeral and they're having a funeral and like someone next door's like foot has popped out or like their hair is visible or something? Yeah, it's not good.
I've
That's
only
not what
heard
you want to
about the
see.
people falling out of the casket.
It's not funny.
No,
It's not
it's
funny.
not, but it's a
Um,
shame.
oh my God, no, it's such a shame. But yeah, that I've seen those things too, and they were something on Lauren, the mortician, was talking about it, about how that occurs, right? Like something with the ground. It could be that there's no vault, et cetera, et cetera. Very interesting. But again, these particular things not relevant to our I was going to say St. Louis number one, true, but New Orleans Cemetery because they bury you above ground and they're very open about that down there, which is something I love. We went to this museum before to wait for our tour, and there was a sign that says, "When I die, bury me above ground." And I was like, I love how like death positive this place is. And when I say death positive, it doesn't mean you want to die, right? I
Right.
feel like sometimes there's a stigma, but really it's just you know that it's probably going to happen one day and that you just educate yourself about it and you're destigmatizing it by talking about it
Yeah,
is essentially it.
there are people who actually go and like try out their casket. And I saw that recently.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't I
I'm
end
not
up on
doing
this.
that. That's one too far for me, but yeah.
No, I always end up on the strange side of Instagram. I have no idea why that happens. Like, you know how people talk about they go on the strange side of TikTok? I'm always on the strange side of Instagram.
Yeah.
And like I saw a lady like actually getting into a casket and filling it, and they had a glass case that they put over top of her so that she wouldn't be enclosed,
Oh yeah.
but like she could feel like how it would actually be like the space between her face and the top and like how the sides felt, how much width she would have. And she was like testing it out. And I'm like, that's
It's a
weird.
lot, but maybe it makes her feel better about it. Do you know what I
Maybe,
mean? Maybe
maybe.
because like I could if you're just doing it for fun, like, ooh, this is nice. But like if you're
Right.
doing it from a place of it makes you feel more comfortable or whatever, then I'm for it. Um, but it's interesting. But like you said, some people like to do that, like our friend going back, Nicolas Cage, who bought himself and built a very shiny crypt
Pyramid.
in
That's
St. Louis number
crazy.
one. Yeah, it's very interesting. So they actually used to film there in that cemetery, a lot of movies, but and I believe it was Easy Rider. Our tour guide kept talking about Easy Rider, which cracked me up. There was a scene where a bunch of them, including Nicolas Cage himself, took LSD and were like hanging all over this like religious thing in the cemetery, which made the church freak out. And they were like, "You, 'cause it's a Catholic cemetery. They won't let anyone film in there anymore." So a lot of them film elsewhere in New Orleans, like the Lafayette Cemetery, which has seen movies filmed there, such as Interview with the Vampire, the show The Originals Vampire Show. There's a lot of vampire shows and movies that have filmed in New Orleans. Um, a lot. And there's more than that, but that's just an example. So one of the other things that I want to talk about from New Orleans is we took a tour of the Garden District from a very monotone man, which made the tour really funny to me because he was so monotone, but then I was like awkwardly laughing at inappropriate times because he would say like, "Hey, look at this yard." Like something like that, and I would just get hysterical because it was so dry, and I was like, that was the whole thought. Like it wasn't like a anyway. He showed us this one house that had a gate that you almost couldn't tell until you looked at it. It was all the way around this fence and this gate that it was like little skulls. And it almost looked like shrunken heads to me. It was, but it's skull. They said it's skulls. So I was like, that's cool. He's telling us about the house. And his delivery I thought was really cool for this because there's this whole district that's just full of these beautiful old enormous homes. And he finally gets to the point about who lives there, because some of it's just historical, like these are historical homes, whatever. And he's like, this is where Anne Rice lived. Now, if you're not familiar with the name Anne Rice, us goth children love
Should
Anne
be.
Rice because she has brought us many books, but most notably Interview with the Vampire,
Mhm.
which did spawn an entire series, of books about vampires and interviewing them, I guess.
Gotta love Lestat, okay?
Yeah, I actually am more of a Louis girl myself,
Mm.
but Louis, I already have this picked out for a future cat that I'll have. I'll name him Louis Dupont Dulac. That's his name. Very adorable. But we saw Anne Rice's house. I was like touching her gate. I was like, oh my God, it's Anne Rice's house.
I
But
love that.
she is actually famous for bringing vampire lore to New Orleans. They actually, there wasn't much about vampires in New Orleans before she brought them there.
Which is
Um,
so interesting because it feels like the vampire hub. Like even when I've listened to people tell stories about being in New Orleans and actually like being around vampires, like not knowing they're around vampires, but having stories about running into these mysterious people.
well,
It's so interesting.
it's very interesting that you say that because on another tour I took, um, we saw a bunch of different things. I'm just going to mention this really quick before I forget. The last stop on the tour was the La Laurie Mansion, which you may or may not be familiar with from American Horror Story Coven when they talk about Delphine La Laurie and her horrible treatment of her, I want to say, helpers in her house. Um,
You know what we mean.
you know what we mean. Who were there against their will, who were treated horribly. A lot of those rumors are true. She did run a horror house, disgusting, awful place. But we need to keep telling history. It's important to know these things, um, and kind of like be educated about them. But it was our last stop. Interestingly enough, Nicolas Cage also bought and lived in that house at one time because he is all over everything weird. So
It's something wrong with him. I think he's an alien. I think there's something up with him.
he might be.
Like I think that he's a reptilian. It's something. Yeah.
He really might be. So I know I was just going to forget to mention that house, so I just want to bring it up before going back to the stop before that on the tour. We were sitting on this corner looking across the street at this beautiful house because there's a lot of beautiful old homes in the French Quarter of New Orleans and many other areas around. And this tour guide was telling us about the story of this vampire. It's a very interesting story, and I'm probably going to botch it. It was late at night, and I drank most of a jazz funeral before going on this tour. If you don't know what a jazz funeral is, it is a giant frozen drink that is full of Everclear. Um, and I actually, it was like, what I'm talking about? Like, they even have them at the Jersey Shore and shit, like those giant, like,
Giant flute looking
tubes. Yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah. So there's actually a skull on the bottom of
Oh,
mine because it's a jazz funeral. Um, Also, which is a really fun thing that they do in New Orleans, just if you guys don't know, they have like a second line, which is like a parade essentially. After you bury someone and you come back, it's like there's a band and they kind of like dance in the street and they
yeah, I've
have
seen
their
that.
little cloths and things that they wave. But do you know why it's called a second line? Little fun trivia I found out while I was there because I always wanted to know.
Please share.
Because the first line is for the dead. So you're on the
Um,
second line. Right, I love that. But yeah, so my drink was called the Jazz Funeral. I had to throw it out when I got all the way down to the skull because I started just laughing for no reason at everything. So I was like, it's time for this to go in the trash. Anyway, so last stop, we're second to last stop, and I'm looking at this house, and the tour guide's telling us about this man, this very interesting man who lived in this house, who they called, he was either like a prince or like a count. Um, oh gosh, and I'm forgetting his name now. Of course I am. Germain, Saint Germain. It
that's the
was
name of a liquor.
Saint Germain, right. So I'm like, I wonder if it was based on this guy. Like, I don't know. So he lived there in, I don't remember, it was like 1800s or something. And he was from, of course, he was from Transylvania. And he was rich. And he immediately began, and this is a person who was actually documented as living there. This is not like it's lore, but it's based in reality.
Right.
Lavish parties where he would have all these people at his house. He would never eat anything. His guests are eating. Um, he'd have food for them, and he would always be drinking his own special wine.
I don't know why you will say his own urine. Like I felt like that's what was getting ready to come out. He was drinking his
Imagine.
own urine.
I'm like, and he loves to drink his own urine, but he loved to drink his own wine. So what he would tell people, because he would not share with them, is he would tell them, family vineyard, sentimental value, there's not a lot left, blah, blah, blah. Very exclusive, right? So this girl one time he takes this lady upstairs with him. I think a party had ended, or I don't remember the logistics specifically, but she was looking around his room and it was kind of interesting. There's like a trap door somewhere. It's beautiful. And this was a girl who was like maybe a little down on her luck and she's in this beautiful mansion, right? And she's like touching the marble on this fireplace and just like, oh, it's so beautiful, it's cool, whatever. And as she is kind of remarking on this, he attacks her and he's like ripping at her throat and she's terrified, right? So she rips herself away from him. And this is one of those old, beautiful houses, like very stereotypical of New Orleans, that has like the beautiful iron balconies. It's like at the corner, you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
She throws herself off the balcony onto the ground and she's broken some limbs, but she's yelling and screaming for everyone that can hear her that this man, there's something wrong with this man. He attacked her, he tried to kill her, blah, 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 whatever. Um, I don't remember if she passed away from her injuries. I think she had just broken some bones. I don't remember exactly. But so people had kind of passed stories on to the police about this man before, but they disregarded him. They were like, he's just eccentric. He's from somewhere else. He's rich, whatever. Leave him alone. They go finally because or she got their attention. And they go to kind of like talk to him, and his doors just pushes open, and they see all his stuff is gone. He's gotten out of there in a hurry to the point that he had actually cut his portraits out of the frames.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
those big old oil paintings and
Yeah.
whatever. So he takes them. So they're looking around the house and they do find like a weird trap door thing and they find all this wine. And they're like, oh, well, this is probably fetch a pretty penny, right? So exclusive, it's fancy, it's whatever. One of the bottles falls on the floor, and they're like, "Oh, well, no, it's fine because there's more, so that one sucks." But they want to like taste it and stuff, right? So everything's fine, but then they notice that what had fallen on the floor had started to congeal
Ew, it's coagulating.
or coagulating blood. I know you're not a person that likes blood. And they were like, "Oh no." Oh, well, that's not good because as police, they knew that even for the time, whatever era this was in. Um, and all of that information leads them to a particular place. Now, again, this is told to me by a tour guide. I did not check any of this information, but she's a local, she's a tour guide. I'm assuming she knows what she's talking about to a point. So she tells us this story, and I'm thinking the whole time, this kind of sounds a little bit familiar. Like, yes, some of it's stereotypical vampire story, right? But then she stops, and I love the way that she did this because it was the perfect, like, like across the street is another house, right? So I'm standing there looking at the house, like kind of diagonal for me where this all occurred. And then the house in front of me, she said, this used to belong to Anne Rice. And she was inspired for Interview with the Vampire. Yes, that was my exact reaction
Oh my God.
from the house across the street that her house actually looked onto. And this story about, like I said, Germain, or I don't think it was Saint Germain. I think that's just the alcohol of Saint Germain, but Germain, this Prince Germain or Duke Germain or whatever, who disappeared and was never allegedly heard from again, whatever. Um, so she ended the story with the bit about Anne Rice, and I was like, oh my God, I love that. Like she did it so well. And I was like, what a perfect place. Like you're just sitting in your room writing and you're looking across the street at this place where this thing occurred.
His was his name Jacques Saint Germain?
Probably.
Because it says Jacques Saint Germain, the infamous Louisiana vampire
Yeah, that's got to be him.
from New Orleans.
She also said it was documented that people who ran into him throughout their life said that he never aged. Like they would age. Like a woman in particular met him when she was like 10, and then she saw him when she was 17, and then she was like 30, and he always looked exactly the same. And there were
Yeah.
multiple occurrences of that. So they say, again, that Anne Rice brought the vampire to New Orleans, but is that true? Perhaps they were already there and she just wrote about them. We don't know. But that's my little vampire story for you. I thought that was very interesting.
That is
Um,
interesting. I had to look him up because I was like, that's weird. The Count of Saint Germain.
that's right. He was a count. He
It
was a
says
count.
he has been called a prophet, a sorcerer, and an immortal. He's been spotted all over the world for 1,000 years, and every time he's been seen, he looks exactly the same age. It says the Count of Saint Germain was an advisor to kings, queens, and emperors.
I
But
love that.
yeah, but he in New Orleans, he was known as Jacques Saint Germain.
Isn't that so interesting though? Like I so okay, I'm gonna say this. The tour I went on said it was like vampires, voodoo, and ghosts. I heard one vampire story. I heard a little bit about how voodoo works, and of my knowledge of voodoo, which I have a little bit, it did not align with what I knew to be true from my own research. So I thought that was weird. And I heard no ghost stories. I only heard dark history, and I love dark history. Don't get me wrong, but that's not the tour I signed up for. Just
Right.
saying.
Because if you wanted
Um,
dark history, you would sign up for a dark history tour.
and if I saw one, I probably would have signed up for it, if we're being honest. But there wasn't one.
Well, there was, you just didn't know
I was
it.
on it. It
Right.
just it just wasn't advertised appropriately. But yeah, if you're a person like me who loves a spooky, haunted city, I loved New Orleans for that. It is not a place like I don't know how to word this. So I'm a New Yorker, right? I live in the suburbs, but I've been to the city. If you're a person who's ever been to a big city and you're concerned about your safety in New Orleans, don't be. It's the same as any big city you've ever been to, but you would just want to be aware of your surroundings and where your money is at, and don't look people in the eye and don't engage with crazy people. It's the same as anywhere because it's the same thing where you walk past someone on the street who's like shouting into the void. You simply cross the street to avoid them. Like it's, it's those kind of things. I felt totally 150% safe during the day. At night, it gets a little sinister. So either don't go out or just be very careful.
Right.
Um,
And
but
she also went close to Super Bowl time, so there was
I
a
did.
heightened police presence too, at
It was
least
only
towards
the
the end,
last
right?
day. It was only the last day that the police presence really got wild. But there are always police out, especially on Bourbon Street. They have a lot of things in place to keep people safe. Um, but like as far as like the culture, the architecture, the people, the food, like if you want to go there, just go there, dude. Like just it's worth the experience.
You
And
need to abide by their laws because they have a law that says if you are a vampire, you may not bite your victims unless they say you can. That is an actual,
consent.
yeah, that's it. But that's the specific law, a vampire law.
I'm
So
sad I didn't meet a vampire there because I think I personally would make a very good vampire. That's how I think about it for myself. If they would let me live, that's their, I don't know. But the other thing I will say, because you just mentioned law, every single person I spoke to in New Orleans who was from there said, we have laws, but nobody abides by them.
holy
They
shit.
said we are a little bit of an anarchist place.
Well,
Yeah.
that means all the vampires are biting people
But
willy-nilly.
I didn't
So
see anyone do it. But I'll tell you the other thing too, even like their homeless population, of which there are many people around, very friendly, very helpful, not like aggressive or weird like I've seen up
in
where I'm at.
cities, yeah,
Yeah, it's like they're very like that Southern charm knows no Southern hospitality knows no bounds. But I will share another Nicolas Cage fact with you. His favorite sandwich is a muffaletta from Central Grocery, and I can tell you I had one, and it is effing delicious. And I wish I could have another one, but
I can believe that
I
being
can't.
his favorite sandwich because he's eccentric. That sandwich is, if you look up the sandwich is huge. And I mean, I've seen and heard of it before, but she showed me a picture of the sandwich that she had, the good one, because there were two, but
I
there was a
had
good one.
two. One was not so good. One was amazing. The one from Central
It
Grocery.
was like bigger than her hand.
The
So
one, the first one I had, yeah, it was all
yeah,
bread though. But
yeah.
they sell them. What's so interesting is it's basically like an Italian sandwich of sorts with like an olive dressing on top. But they make it in like a round, I want to call it a semolina bread, but I think it's just like a seeded Italian bread. But it's round. But at Central Grocery, you can buy them in halves. So you're not having an enormous like sandwich. It's still a good size. The half is plenty. That's all you need. The half is like a regular size sandwich that you will get from a deli,
Okay.
right? That's a good size. So even the first time I asked for a half, and the girl was like, "Are you sure? Do you know how big they are?" Because she said even a quarter is like almost like a burger by
Oh
itself. Like
wow.
it's a lot. But yeah, so those are my little stories. Like I had a lot of other experiences about the place. If you're a person who's going to go there, you want to go there, you need some recommendations as far as tours, restaurants, hotels. I got you. Not going to bore you with that here, because that's not what the Horror Ghouls is about. But I can be your travel agent for a fee of your soul. Just kidding, maybe. Um,
For New Orleans or Salem at this point. She's collecting cities,
yes, I'm
people.
collecting haunted cities. Haunted cities are my favorite cities. And I love a city by the water, but I'm going to tell you, the Mississippi looks gross, right? It's very dirty. It's dirty water. But um it's still in the it's still working its way through land. Like I'm a girl who has grown up by the ocean, so I'm used to ocean water.
Oh, yeah, no,
Like
you're
what
not used to these rivers,
I'm
huh?
not used to these rivers, no. So even my sister, I showed her a picture of a steamboat that was on the Mississippi. It was actually, if you watch the Super Bowl, the Cheetos steamboat. Um, and she was like, "Why does the water look like that?" Because we're used to ocean water, which still is honestly, it's getting a little gross at this point, but it's not like dark brown. So
Yeah, I mean, I live near several rivers and they're all murky like that. In fact, one of them had a dead whale going through it at one point. It smelled
how'd it get in
horrible.
there?
I don't know. I
Oh
have
my
no
gosh.
idea, but it was like a nasty, nasty, corroded smell for quite some time
That's really
as it
gross.
traveled down this river. And I
It
don't
went on,
understand like
yeah.
why they just allowed this nasty whale to go
Yeah,
through.
can someone do something about that? Oh my gosh.
Oh my God, but
We have,
it's oh garbage.
unfortunately, because of where I am, and I will tell you guys that I live on Long Island, and that's all you're gonna get, but I don't mind telling you that. Um, I'm surrounded by coasts on three of four sides, right? So dead shit washes up here all the time. But
Like
because of that,
bodies.
that too, also the mob
Yeah.
has used some of this water as dumping grounds, and like, you know, by the city and such. But they either like take care of it or like it goes back out to sea or like something so it's not just sitting and like stinking up like
Yeah, I can imagine the tide probably washes it back out to sea, but with a river, rivers travel like one way. Most of the
right, right,
time they're
right.
traveling, I believe, north to south. And so they're always flowing and basically pushing whatever's in there through. So you just have to deal with it unless it gets
Right.
stuck and then it's just sitting there, which I feel like that whale. It listen, I'm calling it a whale. It might have been something small in there, but it stunk the holy
It
hell.
smelled like it was a
It
whale.
it smelled like dead body, okay, for
Yeah.
weeks. And
I
so you can only imagine like if it got stuck on something, but
well also the
you know,
Mississippi is so long if we're
it's
talking
not
about
it's not the longest river in the United States, funny enough. It that's a Mandela effect, by the way. It used to be, but I don't think it is anymore.
huh, who knew? Well, I mean, if it's not the longest, it is still very long.
It
So it is going
is.
through like multiple like states and you probably are picking up trash and all kind of shit and dead whale corpses and all kind of stuff like that. Um But yeah, also, I mean, I know you've been around the ocean a bit. Have you smelled low tide? Because low tide can smell really bad.
Oh yeah. Oh
Okay.
yeah.
You're like, yeah, I smelled that. It's gross. Um, yeah, that's gross.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the Missouri River is the longest. But guess what? It's not
What?
that much more. This is why it's a Mandela effect because the
Okay.
Mississippi River, you swear when you hear like, oh, what's the longest river in the United States? It's Mississippi River. The Mississippi River is 2,340 miles long.
Hmm.
The fucking Missouri River is 2,341 miles long.
Oh, so it's real
So
close.
1 mile. And so that's why it's like that's a Mandela effect because we
Oh
never
yeah.
grew up knowing about the Missouri River like that.
No, I never heard of that
Yeah,
before in my life. I mean, I
right.
assumed there was a river there. I will tell you, being close to the river, and they have a famous riverboat in New Orleans, the Queen, the riverboat Queen, right? which is also made famous in the song Rolling on the River, as done by Tina Turner. We're not going to acknowledge the other person who worked on that recording because he sucks. But I was singing that song in the cab too, just like like while I was down there. Um, because it's a great song and because we love Tina Turner and also the Riverboat Queen was right there.
Yeah,
I didn't actually get to see it. It usually is there, but I think because they had the Cheetahs thing out for the Super Bowl.
yeah.
Um, but yes, so that concludes our New Orleans portion of this After Dark. But I want to talk to you guys a little bit about some really fun movies I watched. We talked a little bit about this. I was looking for some movies to watch for Valloween. You may know it as Valentine's Day, but we keep it spooky all the time. Um, I watched Your Monster. Now, did you watch that movie? Did you look into it? Because I know you like gave me a few comments about it, so I don't know if you like looked it up or something.
So y- I now this is a real-time conversation we're getting ready to have right
Yes,
now,
this
okay?
is not
Because
no pre-scripting.
here's what's funny. The whole time you've been calling it Your Monster for quite some time. Is the movie you're talking about called Your Monster?
Yes, yes, Your
Then
Monster.
then no, because the whole
Okay.
time when you kept saying Your Monster, I thought you were referring to a special monster. And so this whole time we have been miscommunicating about who Your Monster is. But now I'm going to have to go watch Your Monster because
That's very funny.
I don't know what
Okay.
that is.
Did
But I'm looking it up now. That's
Okay,
so funny.
that's very funny. So, it was on, I think it was on Max. Um,
Oh.
so I'm gonna tell you honestly, from the cover, it didn't look like I was a movie I would be super interested in.
No, no, it doesn't. It
That I
does
would be
not.
interested in, or that you would be interested in, or
Listen,
either or both.
both, because if you see the cover of this, if y'all ever saw those commercials with the cavemen from back in the day, it was like the Geico commercial.
Yes,
The man on the cover of this, it says your monster love can be a beast. He looks like one of those cavemen from the Geico commercials. So
yes.
no.
So a friend of mine who has solid taste in horror movies recommended this for me because I was asking on my Instagram for recommendations for movies to watch for Halloween. I looked at this at the cover art and I was like, I don't know, but this person has really good taste in horror movies. So I said, what the hell? I'm going to watch it because it was also free. I found it for free. So I'm going to just tell you the overview as stated by Google. It is a horror romance. It came out just last year. It's a soft-spoken actress finds her voice again when she meets a terrifying but weirdly charming monster that lives in her closet. Like I said, cover art put me off. Put me off a little bit. But watching this movie, I didn't know going in, like horror romance, right? I thought I'm going to be scared. It's going to be weird. I don't know. It was funny immediately. And that threw me off my game of being skeptical of it. And I loved this movie. I loved it. Like truly. I would give it like a 9 out of 10 bloody axes.
Wow. Well,
It sounds, I know it sounds weird.
no, no, it doesn't. I'm looking at it. It says the director is Caroline Lindy, and it says that this is based on a true-ish story, and she intended it to be a comfy, cozy, campy fairy tale. And she was inspired to make the film by her love of romantic comedies. So it makes sense that it wasn't something that
Yeah.
was scary and it was more funny. But I'm laughing at not laughing, but I'm curious at the part that says it's a true-ish in quotations.
Yeah. I don't know
Uh,
what that means. But it is quirky. Um, but it's really fun. And like I said, not anything that I would have expected going in. So I definitely highly recommend it. With that being said, like the acting is good. The ending was kind of a surprise to me that made me laugh out loud that I was like, "Oh my gosh, is this happening right now?" Um, it's also a great story, I feel like, about finding your voice. And like sometimes when things happen to people that are bad and you keep downplaying it and telling yourself, "It's okay that this happened to me. It's okay that this happened to me." But your monster, her closet monster, was like, "It's not fucking okay." It's not okay. Get okay with saying that. Like he had to kind of get through to her for her to kind of self-empower. Um, and that's just like one of the themes of it. But like I said, I liked it. It was fun. Highly recommend. I would definitely be interested in your take on it. Um, I really enjoyed it. But what I was also going to say is I don't know if I mentioned this movie before. It seems like a relative of Lisa Frankenstein to me.
Mm,
I know I mentioned that I watched that movie to you. That's another movie I liked a lot, but I didn't know that they would feel connected in any way. Lisa Frankenstein, listeners, is another horror romance that came out last Valentine's Day that I missed in the theater. And I'm going to tell you, it sounds very similar, except different. A misunderstood teenager and a reanimated Victorian corpse embark on a murderous journey together to find love, happiness, and a few missing body parts. Love. And that's directed by Zelda Williams, Robin Williams' daughter. But they have a similar, even though the story isn't like similar, it's a monster and a reanimated Victorian corpse. Like, who can ask for more? But they feel like that same similar, like quirkiness.
yeah.
Um, but I think they're both great picks. I think anyone could like them. They're kind of lighthearted, but they're also very dark
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
same time. Um, so I
Yeah, I
don't
can
know.
see that. I
I
was
think
kind
if,
of
yeah, no, go ahead.
No, I was just saying I was kind of looking at like some of the stuff for Lisa Frankenstein. It didn't do very well, but basically they said because it's a mixture of kooky teen drama, body horror, genuine romance, and the combination of all that with modern sexuality didn't really work in it because it's not really a modern movie. Um, and so yeah, I mean, they said it was an emotional love story, but all the other kookiness kind of overshadowed that. So maybe that's why people were kind of like turned off.
I do feel like these movies are made for very specific people.
People.
And I feel like I'm the very specific person these movies were made for because I am watching them and like laughing them and truly experiencing like a joyful movie watching experience because I'm a person that loves to laugh at weird, quirky effed up, gory, murderous, but like cute things. Like those are all things that I love together.
Murder
Um,
puppies.
yeah, I'm like, oh, that's so cute. Like I think maybe I would be okay with a reanimated corpse boyfriend if he was really nice. Like weird things like I watched Your Monster and then I was talking to my friend who recommended it and I was like, I wish I had a monster in my closet. Like these are things I think about. I don't know, it's weird. Like I don't live in that world because then I would have to
Right.
go to the psych ward, but it's a nice thought. It's a nice thought. So those are good movies, highly recommend. There's no another movie I watched that I know you want to watch. I don't want to talk about it now, with that being said, because I think it would be great for us to talk about it together. Um, there's one other movie I saw recently, Companion, I just saw the other night that was interesting. Did you say that was one that you were thinking about seeing?
Oh, yeah, yeah, because I saw the trailer for it like late. Like I was like, "Oh, what is this?" And it was literally like right before it was coming out. And I was just like, "Oh, this is an interesting movie because it's like all you see was like blood all over the person and
Yeah.
she's like, "I'm so sorry." And I was like, "Oh, wow, that's interesting."
Yeah. Well,
So, yeah.
it's interesting because I was going to actually wait for it to come out, but my cousin was like adamant she wanted to see it in the theater, which I thought was interesting because she doesn't usually want to see, she doesn't really care about seeing things in the theater. But I'll tell you just the overview quick. A weekend getaway turns bloody and violent when a subservient android that's built for human companionship goes haywire.
Mm,
Interesting. It was definitely interesting. I'm not going to give any spoilers because, as always, when we talk about things after dark, they are spoiler free. That's why I keep it vague for you. Because usually they're newer movies. We don't want to, ruin it for you because that sucks. We don't like when
all
people
right.
do that. But also, the person who plays Iris in Companion, that's the main actress, Sophie Thatcher. She's also one of the main actresses in Yellow Jackets. which has just returned. It's in its third season. I watched all three episodes last night before bed and had very weird dreams after. I know it's a show that you want to get onto.
Eventually, yeah.
I think you would like it. Do you know the basic premise of it?
Yeah, you described it to me. We talked about it briefly in another episode, actually. You described it to me then because I hadn't at the
Okay.
time. So
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I
So you know
definitely
what it's
will.
about.
Yeah, I definitely. It sounds interesting to me, but there's like so many shows that I'm backed up
There's
on.
so many shows, and
So
I just got, and I don't know like how long I'm gonna have this. So Paramount Plus with Showtime, if you ever want to like, I don't know, like sponsor us or give us like free memberships or something, that'd be great. Because I just had to get Paramount Plus to watch one of the movies that we're releasing soon, one of our reviews, but also because it has Yellow Jackets. It's the only place I can watch Yellow Jackets, and it's the only place that I can watch the Dexter prequel that has just come out, and perhaps the Dexter super sequel that is coming out, I think, in the summer, um, which I'm nervous about. I'm nervous about sequels and prequels, but Michael C. Hall, Dexter,
yeah.
is involved with all of them, so that makes me feel a little bit better, but still I get nervous. I get nervous.
Well,
But yeah,
thank
there's
you
definitely a
for
lot of
that.
shows and stuff.
Thank you for telling me that because now because I know what the next movie is going to be, so I know where to go get it because I have Paramount Plus.
Oh yeah. I think there's
So
probably a few places you can get it, but it would kind of aligned with I need to watch Yellow Jackets anyway and Dexter, and then I saw it was on there, and then I was like, well, I might as well just get it if all these things are.
yeah, I had it for Star Trek. So
Hmm,
and I still
Star
haven't
Trek.
binged I haven't binged the last season of the one I was watching forever. I was like, oh
Right.
my God, so I'm so behind. But yeah, that's why I even had it. So
Okay. All right. Well, now you know there's other, and it looks when I was searching, it looks like they have a lot of horror content. Pardon me, everyone. I have a tickle in my throat. Looks like they have a lot of horror content on Paramount Plus,
yeah,
so that could be a place for us. And I am going to tell you again, just live conversation happening. You know what I'm excited about?
what?
You're not going to know. This is so vague. There are a couple horror musicals that I'm looking forward to reviewing, and it has nothing to do with the chicken one that you think I'm going to say. That's for another time. No, but popular ones. And I realized today because I was scrolling Instagram and you know how the algorithm works for you as I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot that we have horror musical content. So that brings out the inner theater kid in
Hmm.
me while also remaining dark and twisty. So it's my favorite. I'm excited. So that will come some point in the future. I'm not saying that's coming soon, because we got some other stuff lined up, super soon necessarily, but it's on the list. So buckle up, and if you don't like those, sorry. I'm not really sorry, but we'll find something for everyone at some point. There's so many horror movies to be consumed, right?
That is true. So much to work through.
Absolutely. So that's kind of all the little thingies and whatever that I have for you today. Do you have anything you want to add? Any fun facts? Any weird shit from the internet? Anything like that?
No, today I really don't have anything. I think that
Oh,
honestly, like everything was so interesting. One thing, just circling back to our New Orleans conversation, you
yeah, yeah.
said you are a mausoleum girl. You would like to have a
Yes.
mausoleum. I am a
Love.
headstone girl. So
Yeah.
I want one of those headstones that when your back is turned, it tries to haunt you, and when you turn around, it's like this. So I want one of those.
Oh, I
I
like that.
love the angel headstones. Like I've loved them forever and big gothic headstone. So I think that would be very
What color
cool.
headstone? Are you talking about like a light gray, dark
Marble.
gray? Oh, like a white?
Yeah,
Like
the
the white
white.
marbly one?
Yeah.
I like the black marbly ones, but I really like the white marbly ones too.
I've seen dark ones, dark marbly ones, but a lot of times I see them with the Madonna and her child or like Mary holding a dead Jesus.
Oh.
And I like them how it's depicted in the black marble. Um but I've never seen them in a cemetery.
I
So
think I like the dark gray over like the black, personally. I think. But for
Yeah.
like an actual mausoleum building, I think that the white with like the gray marble
Oh yeah,
looks
that would look nice.
the
Yeah.
best. I know this is probably sounding
This is
super
this
weird
is such a dark
to
conversation, but
all
I mean,
to all the normies, but these are the things I like to talk about. And if you're a friend of mine, you know that these are the conversations I have regularly with people without a second thought.
I
So
mean,
it's nice
we
that we
have
can do this together for the public.
yes. I mean, look, we have skulls around and things like that.
I have right here.
I
Boop,
have
boop.
several, yeah, mine is in my bedroom.
Dismembered hands I got
I
all kind of
have
shit. Yeah.
several Anubis statues.
Hmm.
So, I mean,
I got
and
this.
my other Anubis is sitting back there.
Yeah.
Yes, she has that. Don't fuck with her.
Don't.
Um,
I have a green one too.
but yeah, so I
Just telling
mean,
all our secrets. Yep.
we are dark and spooky ghouls. So
Yeah.
it's what we like. And so
It's what we
hopefully
like.
if you're watching, you at least appreciate our candid nature in our conversation. And if this made you uncomfortable, sorry, talking about death and stuff, sorry that it made you a little uncomfortable. It is something that's natural. We should kind of remove the stigma around it.
And just because
You
it
know,
makes you feel uncomfortable doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad.
true.
Sometimes growth happens out of our comfort zones. But education never hurt anyone, just like how, a lot of people go ahead and pre-plan their services and so on. Sounds like I'm advertising. I'm not, I don't have a funeral home, but that's a thing that happens. So it's never too early to educate yourself. Um, or if
Hmm.
you've just been surrounded by a lot of death, that's fine. You know what's really funny? I just want to
Hmm.
say, I was just talking about white and gray marble.
I have one just like that. It's
This is
over
what
the way. I have a black marble one. I have
this
an
is a
obelisk.
just for you guys, if you don't know what this is a howlite crystal tower, but it is beautiful gray and white marble. There you go. You're welcome.
I have one here too. It is septarian. You're not going to be able to
Cemetery.
really, you can't really tell, but it is septarian.
Oh, that kind
Uh,
of, it almost looks like leopard print
it's actually more like
or
snake
snake
skin.
print. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but
That's
yeah,
pretty.
I have
What's that
that. So,
for? What does it do?
um, honestly, I forget. I also have
Poking people in the eyes, maybe?
this one in particular. Why am I
What
drawing a
is
blank on what it
that?
is? This one is a very, very powerful one. When I remember it, I'll tell you offline. Sorry, people. Um, because I randomly my memory is horrible these days. Probably from getting the vid a few times,
Hmm.
um but yeah, this one is something that it actually charges a lot of energy. It's like very strong healing, very strong like intuition, magnification and stuff, whatever
I can't actually see because your lighting is different over there.
is
What color
weird.
is it?
It is it is clear
Uh-huh.
with like goldish or brown
Okay.
like swirls in it. And like I said, I have like three of these and I can't
That's
remember, but
cool.
it's a very, very, very powerful one.
That's very
But
cool.
yeah, and I have some
Well,
rose quartz around somewhere too. So
we always got, yeah, you always got some rose quartz. You always got a little amethyst around. You always got something, some shit like that. If you're girls like us, wait, literally, here's another amethyst. I have a rose quartz somewhere. But in these after darks, you all, this is where you get to know us a little better. Our personalities really shine through. And
that's
hopefully
true.
that's your jam and your vibe. And if it's not, you're in the wrong place, or just stick to the reviews and don't visit us with the after dark.
True.
But we're always happy to have you. We hope that you enjoy our presences. Yeah, sure, that's a word. We'll stick with that.
I'll leave you with this one very quick story about
Oh,
death and the joys
hooray.
of, right?
The
So
joys of death.
there was a woman. I watched this story recently, and she told it very candidly, and she said, you know, she was young. She's like, I'm gonna say like 37, 38, but her husband died, and her husband said, when I die, cremate me. She said, okay. So she had got him cremated, and she said, you know, when you get a body back from the crematory, you don't realize how big it is. She said it was like 10 pounds, and she was like, I don't understand why he would tell me to do this, knowing that it's 10 pounds. So she took it, she had it in the house for a while. She tried to find an urn for it. She ended up finding a Darth Vader urn. And she she said, okay, I'm going to transfer his ashes to the Darth Vader urn. She tried to take him out of the box. and the bag had a small hole in it.
No.
And so she tried to pull it out. It accidentally ripped, right?
No.
And it got all over the floor. And she's like cursing him out, like, you knew what type of person I was. Why would you do this to me? And then he got in her mouth. And she was so upset about the fact that like ash was flying everywhere, getting in her mouth and everything. She got part of it into the Darth Vader urn, and then she decided that she was going to give some because it was so much of him. She was
Yeah,
going to
right.
give some to like other people to like
Oh.
have little urns of their own, like they could have a piece of him. And once
Yeah.
again, he was stuck and she was ripping them all over the place, like everything that was left. And it was so funny. And she showed the Darth Vader urn at the end, and she was like, "You see, I can't get him back out, so he's in here for life now." But
Oh,
it was so interesting because it was actually like an urn where you lift up the top and you like basically put it into the helmet and put the
right.
top back down. But that story, like she said, and he got in my mouth and I was cursing him out, like,
Oh,
you know
no.
what type of person I am.
That's so funny. So I just want to add to like I feel like there's a difference. Or I don't know. I feel like it takes you experiencing some kind of loss to be able to find so much humor in it.
Yeah,
Now, that might be incorrect. You might be a person who's never experienced any kind of loss and you find a lot of humor in it. But I can tell you, having experienced multiple different kinds of losses, most of them traumatic, unfortunately, um, there is always some humor to be found in those situations or in the aftermath of the situation. Not that it's funny, not that anything is funny, but something weird always happens that you have a memory of that brings you into this club of people who has this deeper understanding that there is humor in the most dark of things. So, like, just going back to the same thing, if you're one of those people, like, welcome, welcome, and you know exactly what we're doing and how we're talking about things and whatever. And if you're not, all I'll say is, you'll see one day.
yeah. I've
But
I've suffered some loss. I haven't found any humor in any of it yet.
not in the loss, but in the
No, I mean,
situation.
even in the situation, like, like the situations were all bad. Like, and
Oh,
I
yeah,
and I
yeah.
was I was honestly like when you said that, I was really thinking like, is there anything from any of the situations? Because I've suffered three major losses. So I'm like, is there anything in those situations that I can like really find something funny? And like even with like the aftermath, like most like one of them I just wanted to fight people. And maybe that was funny. Like the fact that I really wanted to fight. Like I really there was somebody I really wanted to punch in the face. And so that might have been
I
funny. But
think
like
it de
otherwise,
it
I
really
don't know.
depends. Like, so for example, a friend of mine suffered a loss and someone just came in and handed her a bouquet of flowers. And she was like, what the fuck am I going to do with this? So I, being the person who's experienced so much that I'm like the great facilitator, like if you put me in a situation with someone who has experienced that and they're going through it, that I'm like, I just turn into the helper. Like, what do you need? Where can I be? Right. So we go into the bathroom and we find like this thing, we're trying to fill it up with water, and there's like water shooting all over the bathroom in the funeral home. Like those moments that turn into memories later, that it's like you're going through a horrible thing but something like that happens where you're just like, God damn it. Like just
I
a little weird
I would
thing.
have loved for a body to fall out of a casket or for like somebody to fart, like one of the bodies to just let out some gases or something.
Yeah.
I would have loved that. That would have been a memory that I would have laughed at for sure. But like, yeah, I didn't have any of those experiences.
It's
Maybe
not, I mean,
one day.
I mean, it's not something to look forward to, certainly.
No, no,
Maybe
of
one day
course
I'll have
not.
one, but it's like, if it's not, it's just in the way that you are able to reflect on it or look or laugh about Darth Vader urns. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah,
have
like
that thing with you that you're able to laugh about that kind of thing, even if necessarily in your specific situation there was nothing humorous. It turns in later of almost like an appreciation of this other side of life that people don't necessarily find humor in. They always take it super seriously, but you have already demonstrated that you have that gene of laughing
Well,
about the Darth Vader urn.
I listen, I'm going straight to hell, whatever hell is, because
No, you're
I have laughed at people who are in very bad situations. All I do is watch people fall online and stuff like that and break their face and stuff.
oh.
I have done a lot of laughing at very inappropriate things. So I've always had like a dark humor side to me. So yeah, the Darth Vader urn, listen, I lost my shit when she said he got in her mouth. I was like, I know that's not how he was trying to put him in your mouth, but
No,
he got in there anyway. He said, "Let me get
yeah.
my last one in." So,
You gotta have something. I have
yeah.
I'm not gonna share. Maybe one day, everyone, I'll share with you my very wildly traumatic, hysterical to me, traumatic to many others, story that occurred at my dad's funeral service. But not today, and maybe not for a while because we have to be really close for you to get that. The last time I told that story, I was around a bunch of people in my family. Most of them have the same sense of humor as me. Many of them laughed and were entertained. There were two or three people that, when I was led into the room against my will to tell the story, stared at me and were horrified. And I sucked all of the energy out of the room with the retelling of that story. So, like I said, it's not for everyone. Um, but
Those who get it, and
those
those
who
who don't.
get it, and those are your people. That's what you
Yeah.
really have to remember at the end of the day. But yeah, so this has been probably one of our darkest chats ever, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yes. We'll put a trigger
And
warning at the beginning.
we're gonna we're gonna put trigger warnings everywhere. Like this
Yeah,
might
this
be very
one's
upsetting and disturbing to people, but maybe not. Maybe, maybe you're not one of those people. But anyway, um, I guess until our next regular episode, right?
yeah.
All right, so we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us for Horror Ghouls After Dark. Bye.
Bye guys.